Broadcasting from the commodity capital of the world, Zurich, Switzerland, this is Insider's Guide to Energy.
Insider's Guide to Energy, ETRM mini-series, brought to you by Fidectus, where post-trading matters, and Falls and independent management and consulting boutique, creating impacts for clients and markets.
Welcome to Insider's Guide to Energy, educational mini-series on ETRM. Today, we're talking with Brady. And Brady, I think you guys have changed your name. Chris Regan, welcome to the program.
Hello.
Chris, I think I got the company name short. What's the full name today? Because I think it used to be Brady PLC, but I think it's slightly different if I recall.
Brady's fine. We're well known.
Okay, you're Brady. And with me as well is Martin Hiller, my co-host. Martin, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Hi, Chris and Chris.
Hello.
So by now, our audience has probably heard a few of these and is understanding how the concept goes of the ETRM educational mini-series. What we do is we interview individual vendors. Each has an episode of their own, and we start by finding a little bit about them personally, about the company. Then we'll get a little bit of an overview of the market, of what they think is happening in ETRM. As I say each week, at each episode, it's a very crowded space, and we would like to know why that's happening today and what their perspective is. And then we'll give our guests an opportunity to talk about their specific solution. Through the conversation, you'll find out more about what Brady has to offer and what they're thinking of doing in the future. And at the end, we'll have a speed round where we have 10 questions we ask every single participant in the ETRM mini-series, so you can do a compare and contrast to the vendors to see what you're thinking. So, Chris, perhaps we should start about what your role is and what you do for Brady.
Thank you. So my name's Chris Regan. I work as the Energy Product Director within Brady, and I look after our range of short-term and longer-term energy trading solutions. I have a history of working in the UK energy trading market over the last 25 years, where I operated as trading director of the largest UK energy trading desk for a number of years, before going off and creating a battery optimization platform. And now at Brady, I'm focusing on the development of some short-term trading, as well as the maintenance of our existing longer-term ETRM.
So from my understanding, you're a very well-established ETRM. I know a few of your team members that I talk to on a fairly regular basis. Tell me, in your opinion, what's happening in ETRM today? As I said in my introduction, I see the space has gotten crowded. There's a lot of new entrants into the space. What's your opinion of the current state of ETRM?
ETRM is definitely seeing a move away from the larger on-premise installations to the more agile, smaller kind of Sass mid-tier, is my opinion. I think people are not wanting to spend excessive amounts of time on setup and installation. Instead, they want to spin up quickly, and they want to do it more as a SaaS subscription model. And they want to essentially reduce that upfront costs and get started quickly.
So is that applicable to someone that already has install base, or are the new SaaS platforms more targeted to folks that don't have a legacy system in place then?
I think they're more targeted at the moment to the people who haven't got a legacy system in place. But I think most people will be looking at their longer term strategy of what they're doing with their existing on-premise install and working out if that's the right solution for the future. But we also have got to look to the ETRM customers out there. We see consolidation, but we also see the split of businesses between maybe fossil and renewables. And so when you see that division, you start looking at what your right solution is. The other thing that I'm seeing a massive change on is the focus away from longer term trading and a big focus on the requirements of short-term trading, which has just been highlighted recently in the UK with the significant volatility that's gone on in the short term. And of course, if you look at the asset base that most of that electricity is generated from, we are moving away from a dispatchable, predictable asset base into a renewables-led asset base, which means the requirements for long-term trading could be replaced with PPAs, and it's all about short-term management of intermittency.
So, Chris, that's actually quite interesting. You mentioned a few buzzwords like volatility, renewables, short-term trading. I think, as a matter of fact, what you can see in the market is that renewables are becoming more and more the predominant source of energy, not just throughout Europe, but also globally. In that context, how important is the energy transition for your clients, and what do you specifically offer to manage this transition to your clients?
So the energy transition is incredibly important to our clients. There is a move in asset base from longer term dispatchable assets into short term intermittency. So the longer term trades that they will be dialing up will not be coal financials and big gas swaps and spark spreads and dark spread trades, but it will be looking at the underlying exposure to just the energy part from, say, a wind farm or a PV, understanding the ways of modeling the output of these items. It's not just losses that you would get on dispatchable assets like reliability, etc. But there'll be weather patterns, there'll be light patterns. There'll also be the correlation between what the weather is doing and what the price is doing to take into account. So if you then look at that dynamic, the longer term trade booking and risk management is quite different. But then all of these longer term hedges are not clean anymore compared to when you put a longer term hedge against a dispatchable asset. So there's significant amounts of work of turning the longer term hedge into the short term delivery, because the wind will blow when the wind blows, not when you did the 30% hedge, and the solar will be dependent on the cloud cover. So the role of the hedge positions into the prompt and the refinement of them into something that's deliverable to the customer is very, very important.
Yeah, I can definitely see that as well. And from my point of view, that tackles at the end also the question, how optimized can a short-term organization act when it comes to getting in the short-term market and trading there. So what does Brady and your solution in that context in terms of automation along the short-term trading offer?
So Brady's latest new product that has just launched is called PowerDesk. PowerDesk is a short-term trading platform that allows you to manage your trading position through retrading, looking at your forecasts, the maximizing of the optimization of any of your dispatchable assets to meet your contract position. PowerDesk is designed by traders for traders to allow them to visualize what they're going to. So you've talked about automation. The Brady vision of automation is the last bit and not actually the most difficult bit. If you go and you look at traditional solutions of how you do basic position reporting in the prompt, the existing software suite of longer term ETRMs are not adequate. You need a short term power solution. And the reason you need that is the cadence of the updates. So you need to know, am I looking at my latest wind forecast? Am I looking at my latest weather forecast for wind coming in, for my PV, my customer demand, and also when did I last re-optimize my plants? Then you're going to be looking at, for the UK, for example, or GB market, I should say, there's 48 instruments in half hours trading continuously throughout the day. What's my exposure to each of those instruments compared to my demand forecast, compared to my fluctuating wind, and how would I re-optimize assets like batteries within that portfolio? So our first vision at Brady is accurate net open position reporting with intuitive user experience to understand your position.
Yeah.
Now, most ETRMs cannot do that yet.
Exactly.
In that time scales. Now, there is no point in automation without accuracy.
Yeah.
I
think
can
that's
set an algo. I was going to say, I can set an algo bot off to trade, but an algo bot can trade to the very wrong position very, very efficiently. So we are first concentrating on the user experience of balancing.
That makes a lot of sense, I think. Thanks, Chris. Just to briefly step in there. So does it mean that your solution is actually an event-driven solution, especially when it comes to real-time portfolio management? Because I think that is the key where things have to move in terms of short-term trading to be able to react to events in the market and update your positions ideally in real time?
Yes. So our solution is an event-based solution, which has two main drivers. You have the driver in your underlying position. Have I received a new forecast? The other driver is there a price change? So we have found an intuitive way of overlapping volumetric changes, which I would say is event driven by, say, weather forecasts, with price changes, which changes the delta of your flexible assets, which then require reoptimization. And only by overlaying the volumetric and the delta of a price led asset can you then know your true optimization and best traded position.
Interesting. So in that context, you also mentioned some, in the context of real-time position management, you also mentioned other buzzwords like re-optimization or also weather forecasts and so on. I mean, I think what another challenge in that context is to have sufficient models that allow forecasts and or producing forecasts in a very volatile environment as of now. In that context, does the Brady solution also offer, let's say, more sophisticated models that allow precise forecasts than maybe other systems? So, what is your assessment on the modeling capabilities of Brady in short-term trading?
So I have deliberately not developed bespoke models because there are excellent solutions out there already. There
Mhm.
are some amazing people at forecasting wind, forecasting PV. I find that most of the larger players I work with already have their own optimization algorithms that are asset specific. So instead, our solution is a platform that allows you to plug in the forecasts that you already have. Now, there are in fact some optimization engines and basic forecasts in there already as a start for 10 for the entry level user. But what is not is, I think this would be a poor business strategy, is the best at everything in one place. Instead, it's a platform to bring in what you want and where you want to spend your money. So if you want a fantastic wind forecast, there'll be people out there that you can go to, like the Enercast of the world or the Meteorologicas of the world. I'm not going to try to compete with that when I'm trying to build a trading platform. So instead, ensuring that you have a really efficient way of onboarding your latest forecast and visualizing your latest forecast to set about a trading action is the way we built PowerDesk. And then when it comes to optimizations, what we've developed is an intuitive way of running series of optimizations at different price levels, such that if the market were to change quickly, you could actually work out your delta more quickly than your optimizer because it's already pre-run, and you go to a different scenario, and then you understand the gamma of your position in the very short term.
So, so what you're talking about, I hear different words mixed in your speech, right? Some are future words, some are the last little bit of what you talked about seems to be things that are on the truck today. So, what's the migration strategy, or where are you on this journey for your customers?
So in terms of PowerDesk, we put it alongside some longer term ETRM for a number of Nordic and GB customers at the moment. We are at the stage of having the accurate position reports, the rebalancing, trading direct in the market to close your net open position, and a number of augmented views that speed up the traders. We are now writing our platform for automation, and we've already written a number of algo bots that are already market beating and profitable. Those are not in production at the moment. We're in the R&D stage of that. But actually, my vision of automation is not that someone like me as a platform provider would provide algorithms. I would provide some examples. I provide the platform where people can train, visualize, and then P&L coach how their algorithms are doing. And there's an expectation that the buyer of a short-term trading platform would require to recruit quants rather than traditional power traders. And the job of the short-term power trader will move from dispatcher and button clicker to basically someone who reviews bots. And there's a maybe slightly GB specific corollary that I like to put in is years ago, you would go to the checkout at a supermarket and there would be a person scanning your goods. Now you go and you scan your goods yourself and there's a person watching 8 tills at a time to get it through. The trader will no longer be just trading each of the instruments. The trader will be the quant watching 8 automated bots working for them.
Yeah, that sounds quite advanced in the market, but I think that's the right direction to move in terms of algo trading, to build not the strategies itself as a vendor, but the framework around it that allows to develop the strategies sufficiently. In that context, what I've seen is that it's crucial, important to not just code a strategy and provide a platform, but also backtest the strategy against ideally historical data. So tell us a bit more about if your envisioned algo trading framework allows backtesting, and on which data set would that happen? Are you recording order book data and provide that to the client at the end?
So for short-term trading, we are housing all of the data required for backtesting, and the data for short-term trading backtesting that you require is orders as well as trades. Okay, so all of the bids and the offers that are placed as well as the trades that are executed, and then we have a far too big series of independent variables that we've recorded that then go into that backtesting framework that customers might want to use as independent variables into their algo scheme. Now, because we have a lot of experience of how you use those independent variables into the algo portfolio, we have already created metadata based on the historic data of very useful metadata independent variables that would be very powerful to be fed into an algo bot's decision-making process. And so in our framework, we hold that data, and then you have the data for a trading period and the data for a testing period. So we're very aware of the terminology of overfitting. So we don't like to train our algos and then test them on the same data and say, aren't we clever? You have that ability to segregate to avoid overfitting so that you can understand the historical performance of the algo on independent data from what it was trained on. So that is the test harness that you need to be able to write that. And it's not about us telling people how to write them. It's about us writing our own as examples to really harness the process that you need to go through to create a really good trader user experience for them to be able to then write their own algos and having the toolkits to be able to refine them.
Yeah, that sounds like the right way to move forward, to provide the tools that you need around automated trading. And automated trading usually always means for a trading organization, I need to rethink the risks that come from automated trading. So to refine the risk measures within risk management organizations or units, and thinking about how can I monitor the risk arising from algo. I mean, it's real time ideally, and also having mitigation strategies in place in order to cope in a full suit with risk coming from an algo. So tell us a bit more what if you provide also some advanced risk management tools that are capable to manage the risk coming from your algo.
So there's two different ways of thinking about algos and instruments that algos trade on. Now, the traditional instrument that an algo trades on is what I call a rollable instrument. It could be a winter 22 contract, which will trade tomorrow, the next day, and the next day, and the algo is trading on the data it's trained on. It's a large product. It's a large volume product. So if the algo was to go awry from what you're expecting, then yes, you could have significant amounts of value lost. So therefore, you have to have the harnesses and the risk management in place for that large volumetric risk to be handled very quickly. So the algo technology in the short term is completely different because no instrument is repeated or retraded over a longer period. Tomorrow's midday contract is different from yesterday's midday contract, and it will be different from tomorrow's midday contract. So your data that you train and you learn on is not data pertinent to the instrument, but data pertinent to similar instruments. So therefore, there's a lot more in terms of correlations between instruments to inform a trading strategy for the algo to work on. but then that algo will have that same learning, but it will trade small volumes, because by nature, those shorter term products deliver over a shorter period. So if it's a half-hour instrument, even if you're trading a relatively high power, like 100 megawatts, it's still only 50 megawatt hours. So what you actually find then is the algos cannot get it stupidly wrong, like tens of millions wrong in very small products. So instead of looking at each individual one's performance, you now need to look at instrument to instrument trending to make sure that the algo does not consistently get it wrong and lose you money. And that's the way that you manage risk. And so at Brady, with our PowerDesk Edge algo solution, we are designing the P&L visualizations and metrics for you to look at the trending of the algo performance to make sure that you're not consistently losing, but you're consistently winning, and you can see why and where and monitor it that way. So it's not about individual instrument constraints. You can have some volumetric limits. You don't want it to buy or sell twice the national demand. That's quite easy to put in. But what you do need is you need to understand the trending, because you don't want to start off the night and not, you have a night shift, you're not watching it continuously, and 3 hours later, 6 instruments have gone terribly wrong. But then again, you don't want to take a single half hour and kill off all of your algo bots straight away just because one half hour had some funny inputs.
So I like the stories you're telling and the kind of the thresholds or the trending tools that you have. How do the different products work out? So occasionally you'll mention it by product name. So you have an ETRM system that's in place today. You have a newer system that you said that you just recently launched, and you're saying, look, we've got to get this part right before we go back and do more on that part. Is I think what I heard you say earlier in the interview. So
that's they're quite separate. So let me talk about the evolution of how the products work. So you have your classic ETRM, of which Brady has ours, and we have a data management system as well. The classic ETRM is looking at VAR, it's looking at trade life cycle management. It's a larger, slower, complete risk management tool. I've not ever seen a power trading organization that doesn't have a handover between a long-term trading strategy and a short-term management strategy. Now, traditionally, they've done that in the same software, but you always have a different short-term trading desk from the long-term trading desk. They're just completely different strategies and instruments. So similarly, you have a handover from your long-term, slow but very complete risk management system, ETRM, into your short-term ETRM. And that's classically going to be at the week ahead or the day ahead handover, where you lock your longer term, it hands over to the short term, and then the short term works on a very different clock speed, but there's no concept of VAR in the next hour. Okay, so Brady ETRM and EDM operate over that longer term. PowerDesk short-term ETRM is handed the existing contractual position, which are all of those forwards and futures that have come in. Then it ups its clock speed in the way that forecast to assets come in and the way it reads the market prices to rerun its optimizations, and it operates all the way down to delivery. So they always work in partnership. And our PowerDesk solution is designed to be handed over a long-term position from any ETRM. So we're not going to link it just to our own. The curve desk hands over to the short-term desk. The ETRM hands over to PowerDesk. Then in PowerDesk, we have the module which I call Core, which is myopically focused on accurate net open position reporting, event-driven changes to volume, event-driven price changes to the delta of your flexible assets. It means that the trader sits in complete control of knowing that if his position says he's long, he really trusts he's long. And if his position says he's short, he or she really trusts they're short. That is the core module that we have, and that's launched. The algorithmic module, Edge, which contains our ecosystem for algorithmic writing, testing, training, executing, and coaching, that's Edge. That's got algorithmic, but it's also where we've got our advanced optimizers being delivered. And we've got one in already, which is an optimizer just for a simple half-hourly dispatchable. But it's also where we're developing in our battery optimization, gas peaker optimization, storage optimization algorithms. So you buy PowerDesk Core, you can have a trader that really accurately position reports. It feeds in all of his demand changes, and he ends up, or she ends up, with really good trading information to trade. If you add edge, you can automate that process. But the beauty of having edge on top of core is edge knows the position to trade already. If you look at your traditional algorithmic or bot bolt-ons, you tell the bot how much to trade and what price to trade to. I don't call that clever, I call that the dumb bot. Okay? The whole point of using PowerDesk Core is you no longer have to tell the bot what volume to trade to. And because you've got your price feeds and your price IP, you also don't have to tell it what your target price range is. So when you've got the harmony of volume and price working together in Core, then the bot automation at the end, which I described at the beginning as not necessarily the difficult part, has got good information going in. Therefore, you're going to get good performance. And our ethos is do not set a bot off without the good information coming in. Otherwise, it will be the classic garbage in, goes catastrophic garbage out.
Yeah, that sounds pretty spot on. But talking about all these modules, how are they integrated with each other, and how are they communicating with each other?
So the PowerDesk Core, the whole ethos is to make sure that everything is integrated into that single net open position data feed. So therefore, you have to integrate it into your wind forecaster if you have a separate one, but we have the generic API to upload it, which is very easy. You have your handover from your ETRM, which can either be a dynamic handover where the ETRM becomes master and gets trades back, or one where you do an ETRM snapshot and you let your short-term power become master. And then you have your links in, and we've got those direct links in to the major exchanges to make sure your price feed comes in. So that means that your database is single for all of those feeds to give you an accurate net open position. Then we overlay our edge solution to look at that database, and then it goes away. It takes that as an input feed, and it operates at an even faster clock speed when it does algorithmic before coming back. So you don't have super speedy bot technology doing wing forecast acceptance because it's rather expensive. Instead, it takes it as given where your net open position is, so it can go off and work the orders against fast-moving bid-offer spreads. But they are integrated in that there's a handover from longer-term ETRM to short-term PowerDesk, and PowerDesk will then set the bots off on a different infrastructure with those feeds of what they can do.
And from a technical point of view, that all works via, you mentioned it, generic API, right?
So it's a generic API that you would upload your own things, and it would be that you do the handover from any ETRM into PowerDesk. But then we've actually overlaid the technology in the cloud of where Edge works with Core.
Okay. Talking about cloud, I think that's also a very interesting part because the whole industry is moving more and more solutions into the cloud. Can you explain us a bit what the situation there is in terms of your solutions and modules? So what is on cloud already? Are you having still some modules mainly on premise? So how is the situation there?
So most ETRM installations that I've seen so far, apart from the kind of newer mid-tier ones, are on premise. It might be kind of your own cloud, etc., but it's going to be on premise. My PowerDesk solution is a cloud native solution. So not only is it on cloud, it's designed with the tools that the cloud produces to get it faster and better.
Yep.
So it's written in that way, but also to keep the cost down for the customer, it's multi-tenanted as well. So the customer would always have the option of having their own tenancy, which is more expensive, and having their own security, etc. But ultimately, the way to keep the cost down and to keep the performance up is a fully SaaS multi-tenancy solution, because that then allows me to add features and roll them out each day to all of the customers. So if my expert quant Dimitri comes up with a better optimization engine, if I'm multi-tenanted SaaS cloud native, then he writes it once, all of the customers see it the next day. And they can say, oh, I'm using yesterday's optimization algorithm. Why don't I have a look at the performance in my back testing of today's? And they have then the choice of getting those fast updates. I think people are used to in other walks of life away from energy trading.
Okay. So, Chris, what I can see in that context is also that quants, you mentioned it just now, require more and more flexibility in terms of developing their own functionality. And I mean, Python is I think, the most spread coding language that they're using. So, tell us a bit more whether your modules and solutions allow integrating or ideally directly developing custom solutions in your modules.
We call it the Python playground, where you allow
Yeah.
someone to integrate their own code in. So you have your feed of what the exchange is doing. You have your feed of what your net position is. We have created the framework so you can build your bots with those inputs, but we will also allow people to basically plug into the Python playground. So it can, it's very time consuming to write the data feeds and the data model and the data
Yes.
ingestion, but to write the actual algo in Python is very quick once that's all established. So the whole idea is we do all the hard work so that you can do the interesting work either directly through the way we've coded it or through the Python playground.
So you provide the reusable capabilities or components of the platform, and that can be used and spread across the users, and they can specifically implement custom solutions also in Python.
Yes, that's the plugin.
Yeah.
The playground is the whole point, that people can do that. But what we don't want is every customer feeling they have to build their own 10-year history of half-hour orders and prices and their
Yeah.
own test framework and their own framework and ways of basically rating performance between training areas and testing areas. We're trying to get that into the place that is very quick. And so when I think about when Dimitri and his intern Keith are writing my algos at the moment, we spent a lot of time working out how to rate them. And we've come up with our own benchmarks so that you can just basically say, I've come up with this bot, bish, bash, bosh. I now know how it's performed compared to the one I did yesterday. That's when you do that the first time, it takes weeks, but you can get that down to something that's a very fast turnaround.
Yeah. And how does all the hosting and the maintenance and support of the models look like? Are you providing a full serviced and full supported solution to the client, at least as an option?
Are you meaning for the overall software solution, our short-term power desk, or do you mean bots?
For the overall solution, but I understand you have more modules, so maybe your hosting and your support model behind it looks different depending on
It's
the
a
module.
subscription model. It's a
Mm-hmm.
subscription model. We have support, obviously, but it's a fully SaaS, so it's kind of we're running that tenancy. There is a services aspect of people because people have to configure it to their own legacy systems. And then in terms of services, we have aims as we go into the algo space of both training modules, but also we've already started looking into running a series of competitions as well. And myself and Dimitri have got a number of inroads with different universities for algo energy trading competitions, which we've started looking at with a couple of interns so that we can get that feed through and get that kind of interesting community. But overall, the product that I'm talking about is a subscription model product.
And so just as we wind down in this section of the interview before we go to the speed round, so you talk about modules, you talk about working with multiple ETRM vendors going into different components. So maybe a little bit more about your ecosystem. Are you encouraging ecosystem? Do you have partners that you've signed up that work with Brady, or is it just as a la carte, what's in the field right now?
So we have partnerships with people who do IP on price predictions. We have partnerships with people who do renewable forecasts, and we have partnerships with people who would do dispatch of assets, for example. These are areas that I think there's already a strong system out there. So we're building that ecosystem. When I say partnership, that means we just work seamlessly with those. I'm also aware, though, many of our larger customers will have internal IT deliverables on things like renewables forecasts. The major utilities generally use their own as well as some bought in. So that's where the generic API comes in to create that ecosystem. But for me, I maintain that you will have a user experience bespoke to longer term trading, might be on the same platform as something like PowerDesk. You'll have a user experience bespoke to the shorter term, and you'll have a user experience bespoke to automation. All of them can be on the same platform, or they can be linked between different systems. I know that an ETRM changeout for curve trading is a big project. I've done it at one of the largest utilities in Europe. People do not go into that willingly. They go into that kicking and screaming. And I know that the sale of things like a short-term ETRM is a lot stronger if you just interface it with a very simple handshake with an existing ETRM product.
Cool. Well, I think what we're going to do is we're going to switch gears. I think we've got a pretty good feel for what you're thinking at Brady and where you're taking the company right now. This next section is made up of 10 questions that we ask every vendor. We're going to round robin. I'll start out and ask you a question, then Martin will, and we'll just go through the 10 questions. Some of it may seem a little redundant if you've already answered it. Just for consistency, if you could just give a short answer in these sections, because some people might only listen to the 10 questions. So it's important that we get the answers there. All right, so will the market or vendors for ETRM solutions shrink or expand in the future?
It will expand, but then it will shrink as it consolidates.
Okay, how many deals per minute must a modern ETRM system today be capable to import?
Approximately 200 deals per minute in the short term.
Okay.
What commodity types and energy types are you offering, and which ones would you consider your biggest strengths?
We are offering power, gas, oil, and we're across the commodities as Brady. Our strength is power today.
So, do you offer a real-time position management module, and how many trades can you process with it?
We do. We offer the market-leading real-time module called PowerDesk, and that can process hundreds of trades a minute.
Do you have an automated workflow for straight-through processing?
Yes, we do.
Can your ETRM solution price Asian options?
Yes, it can.
Okay. Are you offering a fully integrated and implementation service for your ETRM solution?
Yes, we have a full services department that will do installations.
Okay. So, what is, from your point of view, the biggest threat for third-party ETRM vendors, if there is any?
Regulatory interference from governments to avoid true market forces, such as introductions of price caps or renationalization because of volatility and price spikes.
And how does that impact then the ETM vendor? Just to understand a bit
Their
more.
geographical focus would have to move.
Okay.
There's a burgeoning volatility and short-term market in the GB. However, the GB market is moaning a lot to our government at the moment. It's a fair volatility because of the loss of inertia and dispatchability on the system, but no one likes a price spike when they're a buyer.
Yeah, thanks.
All right. What does your licensing model look like, and is it likely to change in the near future?
Our licensing model on our existing longer term solutions are a maintenance plus subscription fee. However, our movement into the SaaS space with PowerDesk is a pure subscription model, and we have a advanced pricing selection where essentially it's a pick and mix.
Okay. So last question, are you offering an API, and what is the technology behind it?
We are definitely offering an API. I wish you would ask that to the head of engineering instead of the head of product.
Okay, great.
Fair
Thanks.
enough. So we've gone through our 10 questions. This is your chance to kind of any closing thoughts or final thoughts to share with our audience. We have just a couple minutes to wind up. So Chris, any final thoughts?
Yes. A decade ago, I would travel up to a coal power station once a month to talk about how I traded it. I would pass many coal power stations on the M1, and they would be next to where used to be the coal mines. And when I got there, I would see the smoke coming out the chimney, and I'd probably pass some CCGTs. Today, when I drive along, I see banks of PV across either side of the A303, if anyone knows that road. So if general members of the public had noticed those things, then they'll know that the energy market is completely different from what it was a decade ago. Yet how many people are using the same software?
Thank you. Martin, any final thoughts?
No, thank you very much, Chris. Very happy to have you had in the show, and very interesting to see how Brady is developing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Once again, you've spent an hour of your day listening to Insider's Guide to Energy, our educational mini-series on ETRM. Please listen to all the episodes to compare and contrast and see what's in the market today. Thank you.